y'all, it's Kate from the Literary Apothecary and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. This book, as you can see by all of the tabs here, I loved the prose in this book so much. It had such beautiful writing. I ended up giving this one 3.5 out of 5 stars. And I'll talk about why in just a minute, but first let me give you a spoiler-free summary of what this book is all about. I read On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous partly because of the hype. I've heard such great things about this book. I had to find out what it was all about. But also I read it at this time because it was a patron picked by Stephanie. And so I, jumped on that. I read it. I absolutely loved the writing. Spoiler-free summary, like I said, a spoiler-free summary of what this book is all about. And this is a hard one to summarize. It's a letter from a son in his 20s to his Vietnamese mother who can't read. In this, readers learn about what it was like for the author of the book / letter to be raised by his Vietnamese mother and grandmother as a gay American boy. Now, this book, one of the things that I loved about this book so much is that it blurs those lines between novel and nonfiction. Fiction and nonfiction. Is marketed as a novel. As you can see on the cover, it says novel straight on the cover. But it reads so much more like a memoir that it just had me sucked in. Because the author is a Vietnamese American man who is gay. He is a poet, so that explains the beautiful prose in this book. It blurs those lines between where this is fiction and where the nonfiction comes in. Obviously, he took inspiration from his family, but what I don't know, and I could probably find out if I've done a little bit more research on it, is where that inspiration became fiction, where the line was drawn between his life and his family's history and the fiction that he put in this. So this is a beautiful book, but like I said, I don't know kind of how much he made up and how much he wrote about his life while putting it under the guise of fiction. A lot of times people want to write memoirs, they want to write nonfiction, but they're scared to write their life straight out as nonfiction for a lot of different reasons. Fallout, they're worried about their family's responses, they're worried about other people's responses. There's a lot of different reasons why people do this. And this book felt to me a little bit like that. Like he wanted to write a straight memoir, but didn't want to write it in the guise of nonfiction. So instead they slapped this novel title on it. But it definitely read more like a memoir to me, who's read a fair share of her memoirs. But it doesn't take away from the beauty of this book. So what worked for me in this book were the characters. The characters in this book were so real and gritty and like I said, because they felt so real and a lot of things felt so real in this book, it was hard to see where that line of fiction and nonfiction was crossed, which is a good thing, but also we'll get to it in a minute, could also be not such a great thing either. But the other thing that I loved so much about this book was the prose. I highlighted a whole bunch of stuff here. I jotted down, if you go to my written review, which I will link in the description below, you can see all of the quotes that I wrote down from this book. There were so many. Vuong was able to capture the American essence and the essence of being a child of an immigrant in the US and a gay kid coming up in the US. All of those essences in the honesty of a memoir, but in the beautiful language of poetry prose. And that's a weird way of describing that, but that's the only way I can describe it. One example here, and this I feel like is a perfect example of taking nonfiction and something that is fact and just describing it in a way that is hauntingly beautiful. Vuong wrote, in Vietnamese, the word for missing someone and remembering them is the same. And that line gives me goosebumps all over, and I can feel the tears starting to well in my eyes as I talk about it. And that's just the way that Vuong writes. It's, fact, this is the word for in Vietnamese for both things, but just the way that he writes it is just so beautiful. I don't know. I keep thinking about the beauty of his writing, and it makes me, even though I don't read a lot of poetry, it makes me want to go and read his poetry. What didn't really work for me was the plot. Now, I said that it felt like a nonfiction book in the guise of a fiction book, and it also, to me, didn't really have much of a plot line other than this guy writing a letter to his mom that I can't even read, kind of letting it all out, but in a way, it just felt like maybe if it came around and said, like, now you can read, Mom, so I can finally tell you all of this, that would be different. But writing, it's almost like he was writing his own diary, his own journal, because the mom can't read this. So it was almost just therapeutic for himself and not so much for the mother and their relationship. But also didn't feel like it really went anywhere. It felt like we came to nearly the same conclusion at the end, and maybe that's just our author. Maybe that's the character and that's the point of the book, but I was looking, I can't tell you exactly what I was looking for, but I was looking for something a little bit more than what I got in this. But again, that doesn't take away from the beauty of the prose in this book. So if you're looking for a literary fiction with a beautiful moving prose, I highly recommend taking up On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous. It's a very quick read. You'll read it very fast, and I think if you go in looking for that, a literary fiction with moving prose, you will definitely not be disappointed. So that's my spoiler-free review for On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. Like I said, if you're looking for a literary fiction book with beautiful moving prose, this is your book. Go ahead and pick it up now because you will not regret it. If you've read this book, let me know in the comments below, what were your thoughts of this book? I know a lot of people really love this book, so my comments might be a little bit of the lesser crowd. Maybe a hot take, I'm not sure. But let me know in the comments below what you thought of it. As always, my Patreon and my Discord information will be in the description below. Keep reading, and I love y'all to the moon and back. Bye.